Every day, nearly 1/5 of the world's entire oil supply travels through a single narrow strip of water, a corridor squeezed between Iran and Oman. This is the Strait of Hormuz. At its narrowest point, this critical energy lifeline is just 21 miles wide. But the actual shipping lanes are even tighter, only 2 miles in each direction. Through that tiny corridor, tens of millions of barrels of oil pass every single day. Which means one thing: if something disrupts the Strait of Hormuz, the entire global economy feels it, almost immediately. And lately, tensions in the region have reminded the world just how fragile this choke point really is. Warships patrol these waters. Insurance premiums for oil tankers spike. Shipping companies quietly draw up contingency plans. In recent years, the strait has witnessed seized vessels, damaged ships, and direct military confrontations. It is one of the few places on Earth where a single miscalculation could trigger a far wider conflict. The strait isn't officially closed, but the mere possibility of disruption is enough to send global energy markets into a panic. And that panic doesn't stay on trading floors. A disruption here wouldn't just be a geopolitical crisis. It would mean higher fuel prices, rising transportation costs, and more expensive goods on store shelves, felt everywhere, from New York to Tokyo. Which raises a fascinating question. What if ships didn't have to pass through the Strait of Hormuz at all? For decades, engineers and strategists have debated a radical idea: a massive canal cutting through the mountains of Oman's Musandam Peninsula, allowing ships to bypass the strait entirely. On paper, it sounds like the perfect solution, but reality has a way of making simple ideas far more complicated. To understand the canal proposal, you first have to understand the geography. The Persian Gulf is home to some of the largest oil producers on Earth: Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates. Almost every tanker leaving these countries must pass through a single exit point, the Strait of Hormuz. Around 20 million barrels of oil move through this corridor every day, roughly 1/5 of global oil consumption. Few places on Earth carry this level of economic importance. And unlike many other trade routes, alternatives are extremely limited. Some countries have tried to reduce their dependence on the strait. Saudi Arabia built pipelines crossing the Arabian Peninsula to Red Sea ports. The UAE constructed a pipeline connecting its oil fields directly to the port of Fujairah, outside the strait entirely. But even combined, these pipelines carry only a fraction of what tankers move daily. For the rest of the world's energy supply, ships remain essential, which means the global economy still runs through this one narrow gateway. Now look at the map. At the northern tip of Oman lies a rugged piece of land, the Musandam Peninsula. It juts into the Strait of Hormuz like a jagged mountain fortress. But here's the thing. In several places, the distance between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman is surprisingly short. Only a few dozen miles of land separate the two bodies of water. So the idea seems obvious. Dig a canal straight through. Ships leaving the Persian Gulf could bypass the strait entirely, sailing directly into open ocean, avoiding the choke point altogether. Brilliant on a flat map. But the terrain tells a completely different story. The Musandam Peninsula is not flat desert. It is part of the Hajar Mountains, one of the most rugged landscapes in the entire Middle East. Sharp limestone peaks rise sharply from the coastline. Some summits here exceed 2,000 meters, over 6,500 feet above sea level. Building a canal here wouldn't mean dredging sand. It would mean cutting through entire mountain ranges. And the canal would need to be enormous. Modern oil tankers, known as Very Large Crude Carriers, or VLCCs, are among the largest vessels ever built. To safely accommodate them, any canal would need to be deep, wide, and structurally stable enough for ships hundreds of meters long. The excavation required would be staggering. Hundreds of millions of tons of rock, blasted, cut, and removed. Entire mountain ridges reshaped. The environmental damage alone would be immense, and the cost? Potentially hundreds of billions of dollars. To put that in perspective, the massive Panama Canal expansion cost around $5 billion. The Musandam Canal could exceed that figure many times over. But engineering is only half the problem. Even if the technical obstacles could somehow be overcome, another challenge immediately emerges: politics. The Musandam Peninsula belongs to Oman, and as of today, there is no official plan to build any canal here. Oman's development focus for the region is centered on tourism, ports, and regional infrastructure, not carving a shipping corridor through its mountains. A project of this scale would demand extraordinary international cooperation. Regional governments would need to back it. Investors would need to fund it. Long-term security arrangements would need to protect it. Because here is another uncomfortable truth. A canal would not eliminate vulnerability. It would simply relocate the choke point. Instead of the Strait of Hormuz, global oil flows would depend on a single artificial canal. And like any canal, it could still be blocked by a grounded tanker, a targeted attack, or even a natural disaster. The global economy would simply trade one bottleneck for another. So if the Musandam Canal idea is so difficult, why does it keep resurfacing? Because it reveals something much deeper about how the modern world actually functions. Global trade is built on geography, a narrow canal in Egypt, a strait between rival nations, a handful of shipping corridors that quietly keep billions of lives moving forward. For centuries, these natural choke points have shaped the flow of energy, goods, and power across the planet. The Musandam Canal represents a dream, the dream of redesigning geography itself, of removing one of the world's most fragile and dangerous bottlenecks through sheer human ambition. But reality is stubborn. Mountains resist. Politics resists even harder. And there is a bigger picture here that often goes unspoken. The very fact that the world keeps returning to this idea, century after century, crisis after crisis, tells us something important. Our global energy system was never designed with resilience in mind. It evolved organically, following the path of least resistance, until entire economies became dependent on a handful of narrow corridors that no single nation fully controls. The Strait of Hormuz is not an anomaly, it is a symptom. The world has the Strait of Malacca in Southeast Asia, through which nearly a third of global trade passes. It has the Suez Canal, whose brief blockage in 2021 cost global trade an estimated $9 billion per day. It has the Bab el-Mandeb Strait near Yemen, where Houthi attacks in 2023 and 2024 forced dozens of shipping companies to reroute vessels thousands of miles around Africa, adding weeks to delivery times and pushing freight costs sharply higher. Each of these choke points carries the same fundamental risk: concentration. When the flow of energy or goods depends on a single narrow passage, the entire system becomes only as strong as its weakest geographic link. Engineers dream of canals. Strategists talk about pipelines. Governments quietly stockpile reserves. But the deeper solution, diversifying the global energy system itself, reducing the world's dependence on long, vulnerable fossil fuel supply chains, remains the one conversation that rarely gets the attention it deserves. For now, the Strait of Hormuz remains what it has always been: essential, exposed, and irreplaceable. The Musandam Canal may never be built. The mountains may never move. But the question it forces us to ask, how fragile is the system we have built, grows more urgent with every passing year. Because in a world of rising tensions, climate uncertainty, and shifting power, the real engineering challenge isn't cutting through a mountain. It's building a global system that doesn't depend on one,